Test, test. All right, folks, we're gathering in. You'll take your seats, please. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Welcome to the Tampa Heights Civic Association General Meeting for June 26, 2024. My name is Rick Fernandez. I have the privilege of being president of the association. We have a number of our board members here. I'm not going to take the time necessary to introduce everyone, but they'll be working the crowd during and after the meeting. So I hope you'll introduce yourselves, and if you want to get involved with the association, that you'll offer yourself up. I can assure you it's a hole that you never stop digging. There's always something to do around here, so we need your help. First of all, a little bit on protocol. Those of you who have come to our meetings routinely know about this. Others, you won't, so excuse the repetition. We cater here to two audiences. We have the group in the room, and I think you'll have no problem hearing me and anyone else at the podium. Between projection and this little doohickey here projects pretty well. But we also have a virtual audience, varies anywhere from 1 to 20 people sometimes more. But in any event, they depend on another mic, this one, that's up on the podium. So when you're speaking, if you're up here as a presenter or you're offering an announcement, please remember you have the two audiences, number one. Number two, when we come to a point in the meeting, as we will very early on when we have City Council member Clendenin up here and then afterwards, if we come into Q&A, for instance, if you have a question, ask the speaker please to repeat the question for the Zoom audience, because they're not going to be able to hear whatever comes from the floor. And if you are in the audience and you have something a little bit more detailed that you want to talk about in asking your question, feel free to come up here. We'll let you use the mic to do that. But in any event, just be cognizant of the fact that there's more going on here than just what meets the eye in the room. We have a sign-in table back there. Faith and Jana are kind enough to man their post. If you haven't signed in, please do so at some point before you leave. Let us know if you're a member of the association or not, and offer, hey Camila, offer whatever contact information you feel comfortable giving us, and we'll be back to you. Our agenda tonight is packed, frankly, not because we have a lot of items to cover, but there's a lot of substance. And just generally by way of summary, we will have a discussion and update on the streetcar extension into Tampa Heights and hopefully beyond. And our land use committee is doing something a little unique for us tonight. They're going to conduct a workshop designed to solicit ideas and feedback from you folks on future development priorities in Tampa Heights. Often we find ourselves up here on the stage talking to you and at you, but we don't have a lot of opportunity for you to speak back. So this is a good opportunity for us to pick up some facts and ideas and directions from you. So I hope you'll stick around for the entire meeting and participate. There will come a point where we break you up into work groups, and Brian Seal, who is here somewhere back in the back of the room, is chair of the committee, the land use committee. He'll explain more of that when he introduces the program. I guess that takes us to announcements. Oh, one other thing. I generally try to adjourn these meetings by 8:30. That's probably not going to happen tonight because we have, as I said before, a lot going on. But our hard stop, at least in my mind, is 9 o'clock, leaving some room in the course of the give and take for Q&A. So hopefully you can budget your time accordingly and stick with us until 9 o'clock. If we get out sooner, I'll certainly try to adjourn us sooner than that. Announcements. Kareem Young, our first VP.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be as quick as possible because of the agenda. The CRA board has approved $8.5 million. It's very important It's a grant for commercial property owners, and also that they've included a legacy credit there for long-term owners. So let me explain what those four different grants that are available for property owners and or commercial, for commercial property owners in any CRA. So the first grant that you're eligible for is for commercial interior grant up to $75,000. A commercial interior grant up to $75,000, pre-development grant. This is for commercial and or business owners to reduce upfront development costs. Then there's a special projects grant available for certain limited projects that meet CRA goals. Now you got to understand that most of those are matched at 50%, but with the legacy credit, this says that if you are an owner of your commercial owner inside of these CRAs and you've been there at least 5 years, then the money that you would put forward is 35% and they'll match it. And it goes down all the way. So 5 years is 35%. All you have to do is put the 35% up and they'll actually match it up to that $75,000. Then if it's 10 years, it's 25%. If you've been in the neighborhood or that CRA for 15 years, then it's 15%. And 20 and more years, you don't have any upfront costs at all. No reimbursement is needed. Okay, so this is for commercial owners inside of any CRA. So make sure you look at all the CRA boundaries. If you're a commercial owner, you go on to the website for the city. Also, we have the link inside of, if you've gotten an invite from for this meeting, if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see it there. You'll see the link there. But you can also go on the city website in order to get more information. All right. Property owners must be located within one of the Tampa Heights CRA boundaries and must schedule a pre-application meeting. All right, so those are important. And let me give you some dates. Applications will be made during pre-application meetings starting on July 1st. So you got until, well, it'll start next week, Monday, all right, on July 1st, okay? One other quick announcement, if I can, for the Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, tomorrow night from 6:30 to 8:30, we'll have our Tampa Heights Legacy Ensemble. It was wonderful last year. It's healing through cultural arts, and it's really just remembering those who have been in this area before. It was an amazing performance last year, so we need support. If you can't come, just go to Tampa Heights, go to thcca.org and please support. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple of nuggets to share with you by way of just FYI. You may have seen in the press over the course of the last 1 to 2 weeks, Tampa Bay Business Journal, Times, articles about recent action by the Transportation Planning Organization Board and affecting the widening of Interstate 275 north of Hillsborough Avenue to Bears. This is a section of 275 that we've been litigating over now for years. And honestly, most of us who have been in the advocacy role for the last 7 or 8 years now thought that that particular segment of 275 was safe from any further expansion. As of the last TPO board meeting, it would appear that there is now a crack in the door that may allow revisiting the expansion of that section of the interstate. We don't know by how much. Previous discussion was 2 general use lanes, meaning non-tolled, one going north, one going south from Hillsborough Avenue up to Bears. Nonetheless, these are issues that are yet to be litigated. We're just going to have to go at it again. But if you're interested in this, if you're concerned about it, we've already begun discussions with our friends in Seminole Heights, and I'm going to extend that beyond, because obviously there are a lot of neighborhoods that are affected by this. But we may have a redo of some of the types of TPO board meetings that we saw 5, 6 years ago, where dozens of people showed up at the meetings. It's going to be a hot ticket item. I think a lot of people are going to be incensed by it. So be aware. I'm sure there's going to be more press about it, and we will certainly keep you informed. On a more positive note, Robles Park, we've talked about this the last couple of meetings. We're engaged in conversation now with the city of Tampa and with the DOT regarding additional buffering, vegetation, foresting, if you will, of the perimeter on the east side of Robles Park in order to provide more protection against the interstate. If you're familiar with the area, they are building, they meaning DOT is building a wall along the eastern perimeter of the park. There are some trees there now in the DOT right of way. Of course, the park is there with a very nice array of oaks, but DOT has agreed to expand on their greenery in front of the wall, hopefully to obscure it from view, at least to the extent that's possible. And the city of Tampa, I learned from Lena Young-Green this week, is on the cusp of coming up with a plan that will allow for dozens, if not well over 100 plantings along the eastern perimeter of Robles Park, which is within their jurisdiction. The combination of the two hopefully will have a very beneficial effect for the people living in and around the Robles Park area in particular, and Tampa Heights writ large. So keep an eye open for this. I think there'll probably be an opportunity for community involvement, maybe bringing some people out for plantings and that sort of thing. But we're very excited about it. We're particularly excited about the 14-foot concrete wall, but we may be able to make something positive out of it. So stay alert to that. And finally, I received 3 or 4 emails over the course of the last 2 weeks from folks inquiring about the stretch from Palm Avenue to Francis, just on the other side of the community garden. If you're familiar with that stretch of the walk, we had some beautiful trees there, 25, 30-foot trees, looked like Christmas trees. They were gorgeous, obscuring to a large degree the wall that is there now, which is huge. If you're out there now, you'll see all those trees have been cut down. That's a precursor to the DOT work in expanding the interstate down this stretch of 275. And they've cut down those trees, anticipating that the wall is going to be moved out a certain distance. So that's why those trees are gone. I've been asked if they're going to be replaced by DOT. I assure you that discussion is ongoing, and I expect that it will be, but it'll probably be years before that happens. For now, we're going to have a blank wall, construction, and a lot of dust, dirt, and, well, it's miserable. I just lived through it over on Elmore, and it's not fun. But that's what's happening here. Okay, I'll shut up now. Now, what most of you probably came here for today, or at least many of you did, we've been fortunate enough, Camilo. Oh, you want to do it now? Okay, Camilo Soto wants to give you an announcement. So come on, you got a couple of minutes.
I have 2 minutes and I will stick to it. I just wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to talk to the general body and just kind of update you all on those FDOT improvements to basically Tampa Street and Florida Avenue. I was just informed this week that FDOT will be reducing the scope of the improvements to Tampa Street and Florida Avenue. What does that mean to the neighborhood? It means that FDOT will no longer be doing the drainage improvements that were promised in the capital improvement project list. I was just informed of this late last week by Ben Alushny, who is the senior stormwater planning engineer for the mobility department. And so we're all trying to kind of figure out whether the city of Tampa may step in, because the city acknowledges the flooding issues. You all probably experienced the flooding issues when you're driving along Florida Avenue and Tampa Street. I can get really into the weeds on that, but I'm really trying to kind of just find a way forward to ensure that we get drainage improvements that are much needed. We're Tampa Heights, geographically the highest point in all of the city of Tampa, and we flood. Bayshore, on the other hand, below sea level, and they throw an inordinate amount of money, bad money, I would say, to keep them somewhat less flood prone. So I'd like the same treatment considering our taxes here that we pay for. It's been kind of a project of mine for the last few years for our particular little sliver of the neighborhood of Tampa Heights. But now with FDOT retracting the scope of work, I think it's important that we mobilize as a neighborhood and demand drainage improvements, whether they be from FDOT, whether they be from the city of Tampa. We need drainage improvements. So this is all. I'll keep you all posted as I continue ferreting out information.
Thanks.
Yep.
And for the record, I asked for you before, but you weren't here yet, but I was looking for you.
Thanks.
All right. I know, I hadn't forgotten you. Okay. I gave you a little teaser about Alan Clendenin. He's sitting in the back of the room, wearing glasses, waving, smiling. Alan is one of 7 members of the Tampa City Council. He is one of 3 with citywide jurisdiction. He represents District 1, so he represents the entire city of Tampa, along with Lynn Hertek and Guido Maniscalco, I believe, are the other 2 at large. In a prior life, I always get a kick out of this. In a prior life, Alan was a air traffic controller, over 30 years as an air traffic controller, which I figured means he's very well studied in the art of conflict resolution and stress management. And these have got to be solid skills for living and working in City Hall. So, and I imagine coming to talk to a group like this is a piece of cake, walk in the park for you. But nonetheless, we're glad you found your way to city government. And tonight, Alan is here to update us on the streetcar extension up through and hopefully through Tampa Heights. I also asked him, although I'm not sure that he's had time really to get up to speed on it, to at least take a look at our neighborhood plan and perhaps be in a position to answer some questions or give some guidance as to how we might manage to navigate that plan from its current posture as a resolution to an ordinance. And as I said, that's a kind of a collateral matter for the night, but if we get to it, we have time, we'll get to it. That said, please welcome Alan Clendenin.
Well, good evening, everybody. I was telling a couple folks, I've been in office a little over a year, and I don't even know how many times I've been to the Civic. So I hardly ever go to any of the others. I just find my way back here all the time. I normally am in a jacket and a tie, but I tell you, I've realized that I have to start changing my life because of the heat outside. I realize that I'm in no condition to go to hell, so I need to make some better life decisions. So I chose not to wear a tie and a jacket tonight because of the temperature outside. I know there's a lot of things. This is I've said this before when I spoke with you guys. This is one of the more exciting neighborhoods in the city of Tampa. There's so many things happening here, and this neighborhood in this area represents so much about what makes Tampa special between the historic areas and the diversity, the growth. There's so much that's happening in this area, and it's just a sliver of a representation of what Tampa is and what it means. But one of the passions that I have, of course, that my former life being air traffic control, and which most of it was right here in Tampa Bay and Tampa International, is of course transportation. And one of the things that's been clear to me most of my adult life as we look at ways of how the government can assist communities, how we can be transformational, is assist in moving people around, moving them from their places of residence to their work, places that they play or places that they go for education, where they shop, assisting seniors and aging in place so that they have transportation to get to grocery stores and to medical care, to help with folks that are disabled. There's just a plethora of reasons why transportation is such an integral part of a community. And for the greatest amount of good, for the greatest amount of people, I actually believe that this is one of those things where government spending can assist. It's something that really has to have that catalyst for government, because the government is what owns and operates these public transit around the country and around the world. How many people in this room believe that the streetcar was never going to get expanded? That it was just exactly. Well, I will tell you, a year ago you would have been right. I came into office like a bull in a china shop because it was a passion project of mine. And I found that thing where it was buried. I dug it up, pulled it out, put the little shockers on it and gave mouth to mouth. And I'm happy to report it is full steam ahead. Everybody that is got a piece of this is now 100% on board of making this happen. Right now, it is the highest regional infrastructure accelerator priority that impacts the city. So from the mayor, the administration, the state, our federal partners, everybody's on board with ensuring that the streetcar is expanded and provides this alternate form of transportation to provide at least the backbone or the spine of a car-free environment that people live within the urban core of the city of Tampa. This year, the streetcar is projected to hit 1.6 million people ridership. I mean, this thing is really short. You know, when we extend this, the amount of track is going to triple. So for what's there right now, it's 1.6 million. It alternates between the second and third most popular, most ridden streetcar systems in the United States. And it really just right now only goes from kind of just, it's a novelty, you know, going from downtown the convention center, the aquarium and the Ybor area originally was kind of generated for visitors and to promote tourism. But this opportunity to expand it through northern downtown or through downtown, northern downtown and Tampa Heights is an ability to actually create a real opportunity to move people so that you can live that ideal of living car free, so that when you leave your residence, you can go to dinner, you can go to the Stratus, you can go to the Tampa Theater, you can go down to Channel Side and not have to worry about exorbitant parking and be able to move about car free. Where we are right now is, as we speak, I don't know if those of you that follow Tampa and the CRA, the people that for those of you who don't familiar with the government, City Council 7 people, and we meet 3 weeks out of the month as City Council, but 1 week out of the month we are the same people, but we are actually the CRA. And almost a year ago, I introduced a motion to allocate $5 million out of the downtown CRA to help fund as a catalyst to get this process going, and that was approved. And so right now, between that and federal money, we are updating. There was a study done quite some time ago about expanding the streetcar up Florida to Palm and then back down Tampa. One of the things that I've been pushing very hard is to continue the streetcar up to Columbus or maybe Amelia, which was right before Columbus, but to really penetrate deeper into the neighborhood. And again, part of the idealism of doing this is to create a backbone or a spine to grow other forms of transportation, because this is just the beginning. I want to be able to interconnect this with rubber wheel options to be able to get to Brightline in Ybor City, possibly light rail options to go from the airport to connect to the streetcar, and BRT to go from the streetcar penetrate deeper into areas of the city or even into the county. But right now we have an RFQ. The documents are being prepared. We've got like 2 more set of eyes to look at them, and then it's going to hit the streets literally in the next week or 2. So this RFQ to do this update this study to make sure that we have all the facts and figures, because the last facts and figures are way out of date as far as cost and also stopped at Palm. That RFQ is going to last probably a little over a year, maybe a year and a half. And as soon as that's done, we're going to be ready. We're going to go direct to design build. So within a year and a half, the contracts will be let for a design build to start construction on the streetcar. That's the good news. The bad news, government moves very, very slow. And it probably, idealistically, is at least 5 years before it actually starts operating on this line. That's how long it takes for this thing to happen. But it is happening. It's just going to be a little bit slower than I think most of us would like to see. Right now, the proposal or the idea is, again, it will leave where it terminates now by the convention center, come up, make a right turn, go up, turn left on Florida, go northbound on Florida, go all the way up to, again, Amelia or Columbus, turn left, and then go southbound on Tampa, and then reconnect down there. Brightline's coming into Ybor City, hopefully, into around Nucio, possibly in some HCC property that they're looking to take control of. And then we can connect on Palm, a rubber wheel circulator goes back and forth. That goes between Brightline, comes down, connects with the streetcar really in 2 places, because we can hit it going northbound on Florida, southbound on Tampa, and then continue over into Armature Works. And that's a really, people ask me all the time, why don't we create a loop into Ybor City? One, part of that problem is, and is really the neighborhood. What we look is these developments of creating some of the density along transportation corridors, and the area between Florida and where the new CO station would be is really very much single family and not necessarily developable with density as we see that's happening along Florida, and like with the YMCA project and these other apartment developments we see along Florida and Tampa. We don't have that opportunity along there. So the rubber wheel option is the most cost effective and easiest way to do that. Let's see what else have I spoke about. We are finishing a study right now. I don't know if you're aware that there is a streetcar district. And when it was created, again, Tampa looked very different. Water Street didn't really exist. Channelside really didn't exist. Nobody was living there. Ybor City wasn't the Ybor City we see today. So when they created the district to support the streetcar, it was only commercial properties. It did not include residential properties, mostly because most of the people that lived were either very working class or poor people that lived in like Ybor City, and there wasn't the appetite to include them into the process. So we've spoken with a lot of the neighborhood associations. Anything that's impacted by the streetcar, we're expanding. We're looking at the district to be able to have a streetcar district with a small fee for the folks that live within that area to be able to keep the streetcar free for everybody, because I think that's kind of really helpful and really helps with a lot of equity issues and people using this form of transportation. And it's having that streetcar send through is going to be a benefit to everybody, whether they use it or not in the neighborhood, because it's going to take cars off of the road. I could tell people who don't use transit, realize that for every single person that rides transit, it's one car that's coming off the road that the people that are only going to be in cars don't have to compete with, and gets them off of. So it really is a benefit for all, whether you're riding it or not riding it. Supporting transportation is critically important to us all. And that's kind of where we are with the streetcar. I would say I'm really excited. The mayor is fully behind it. We have really good support with city council. Staff understands the importance it has in the city of Tampa, and that the political leaders are behind this. The TPO is on our priority list, which some of you in the room serve on the CAC for the TPO. I serve on the TPO as a board member. And if we want to talk about what you talked about there earlier, we can do that after we talk about streetcar. But that's kind of like where we're at with the streetcar. I'm happy to answer questions. Yes, ma'am.
What I don't see on the streetcar or any of the bus, right? Any of the transit is areas where they have a lot of parking areas so that people can drive to the streetcar, and people will be able to do that and then just take the streetcar to work or whatever. And
Okay, so
is that anything that is planned?
the question is about parking accommodations that would. Yeah, the parking is about parking accommodations and transportation to the streetcar. Ideally, once our transportation system is built out, people who ride the streetcar will be connecting via other forms, like a mixed modal system. You'll be coming via BRT, light rail, or what.
20 years.
Yeah, it's all incremental. Well, again, the streetcar was dead a year ago. Now it's moving forward. So it's a first step of creating a spine. I don't necessarily, the devil of the details as far as that's concerned, I don't necessarily see us building a lot of parking infrastructure around, only because one, the value of the property it's everywhere where the streetcar touches, the values of the properties, the dirt is so expensive. I mean, it's just really, really expensive dirt.
What? The illegally couples block. Couples block. We had to walk back 3 blocks. I had mobility issues. Not only, there was also the construction, so we were forced to go into the street rather than the sidewalks, to even get to the street wall. I mean, it was not an easy thing to do.
Well, there's one for mobility. If you have a handicap sticker, the city of Tampa, we recently changed. Well, no, you don't even have to. No, you don't even have to park at a spot. If you have a handicap sticker now in the city of Tampa, your parking is free on the street. You just need to display your placard and you can park in any City of Tampa on-street parking spot for free. So you do not have to just park in a handicapped spot.
Question.
And I saw a hand up here for verse 2. I don't know, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, probably a lot of people have this question. Is there any like thoughts of like taking it farther north of that too? Like eventually, like, you know, after this?
So the question is, why don't we expand this further north? Really, because what the streetcar is and the speed is very much suited for a compact urban area. So as we leave this urban area, we'd be looking for other types of alternatives to be able to move people back and forth, like rapid bus transit or light rail systems. So what we'll look is to connect that for speed and efficiency with other types of systems and also cost to be able to connect for over longer distances.
Great. Right now, what the capacity would be, let's say, for a week or a year?
The frequency is every 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the time of day and when. It will keep that same frequency. I believe they're shooting for 10 minutes along the route. Of course, we're going to add additional vehicles. There's so the question about that was frequency and capacity. One of the questions I'm sure people have probably seen is that people talked about modernizing the system. That would have actually increased capacity, but there's several problems with one, it almost doubles the cost. And quite frankly, we can't afford it. And so rather than let perfect get in the way of good, we're pursuing what we can afford and what we can actually achieve. And that's using the historic streetcars too. Some of the money we're going to use for federal funding requires parts like the cars to be manufactured in the United States. Those modern cars are like made in Germany, they're made in Japan, they're not made here. The historic streetcar is American made. So we're going to stick with the historic streetcar. One of the modifications that I'm asking for is to make sure that they can accommodate bicycles, so people can get to the streetcar with a bike. And so that's one of the deficiencies we have now, is being able to accommodate bicycles.
Neil.
Councilman, the line of flooding that occur in a good section where the expansion is going to take place. Does the city intend to design in flood mitigation to avoid having people wading through hanging or knee-deep water to access or get off the streetcar expansion?
Well, the question was about flooding and street flooding in the area that the streetcar will be serving. I'm not happy to report that street flooding is a problem throughout the city of Tampa, and I will say that the administration, the Bob Buckhorn administration was the flood mitigation and stormwater relief. It's one of the most comprehensive and really forward-thinking floodwater relief programs in not just the city of Tampa, but in the state of Florida. We're spending an enormous amount of money for flood relief all over just the city of Tampa. It's not even close to being partially finished. It's a very complex system that they create to mitigate flooding in our areas. And again, street flooding affects, I mean, we've seen it. You should have Parkland Estates, man. I was just with that torrential afternoon thunderstorms we just had. They had like 2.5 feet of water in their streets just this past couple of storms. It's pretty bad in that area. But there are other areas all over. I mean, literally, I don't know if New Tampa has flooding issues, but just about everybody else in the city of Tampa has flooding issues.
But in order is focused around South Tampa, Bayshore, Tampa Heights getting on.
Actually, not so much Bayshore, because Bayshore, it's not as achievable. We have a stormwater project that's coming that's targeted, which will, like for Parkland Estates, which is actually off of Swan, not quite a distance, but it's going to come down because of the flow of water. Water naturally, flows downhill towards the bay. And so a lot of they're trying to capture the water before it gets down that way. And of course, we've got this project they're looking at between the Swan and Howard corridor. We have a lot of south of Gandy flood mitigation, Gandy, Manhattan for South Tampa, but there's also East Tampa has flood mitigation programs going on.
You can essentially acknowledge that a lot of other places in Tampa have flood mitigation.
Yes.
But if you look at the capital improvement project, that's Tampa Heights.
I'll take an I'll take an IOU and look and see where we're at. Yeah, no, I'll take an IOU and look where it is on the priority list.
Next question. Here, Roger. My question, A part, B part, about finance. The Florida Avenue corridor right now is undergoing a lot of construction
Mhm.
and is seeing a lot of proposed construction.
Mhm.
Are these projects in any way required to contribute directly to the streetcar project for the reason that they will benefit the most from the street?
Okay, so
Then the big part is when, assuming that the streetcar is going to go forward, is there anything being required of these projects to reduce their parking? One parking space in the parking lot costs between $75 and $80,000. This is passed on to the renter or the buyer. And we talk about how expensive housing is. We reduce those costs by $80,000 per apartment. That's the savings. And with the streetcar, it seems that there is just an old pattern of the streetcar projects being proposed for this corridor, old suburban patterns of producing as many parking spaces as possible.
So the question was a two-part question. The first part was for development that's being currently in development along this proposed expansion area, whether those developers are being required to contribute towards the construction of the streetcar. The answer is no, and for a couple of reasons. One, the project doesn't actually exist yet, so there's nothing really to. Now, when developers, I don't know if you're aware, when developers come in, they do many times they ask for different types of concessions. They ask for bonus densities. They ask for, all kinds of things. And what we do, we enter a community benefits agreement with them, and they will provide, like, we frequently, because housing has been so critical, we've asked them to provide X number of units at below market rate. So to be able to, okay, we'll give you this if you give us that. One of the things that they can do is they can underground utilities. It's kind of like a Chinese menu of things that developers can do to be able to get concessions from the city to be able to develop their project. I imagine that as we continue and this project expands, we may be able to add that to that list. I'm happy to report that several of the developments along the proposed extension, and including the existing streetcar line, the developers are already incorporating plans and to accommodate a streetcar stop on their property. So that is actually happening. We're seeing it in Gasworks, and we're actually seeing it on Florida. A couple of the projects there are actually planning on streetcar and helping us out with those stops. The construction that you see, a lot of the construction you see on Florida is actually geared with FDOT and the city of Tampa is coordinated. That construction is going to facilitate and help make the streetcar less expensive because it's already accommodating the right of way and what we need to be put in place, and creating utility corridors, underground utility corridors we need, and other things. All that's being done in a very deliberate way to accommodate what we know is coming.
Every one of those projects need either a land use amendment or a rezoning.
Most of them seem to, and those what comes before council. The second part of the question was about parking minimums. The appetite on city council right now, if you follow us, I don't think that there's any appetite for not waiving most of the parking. We waive parking minimums with the exception of one council person that's been there a long time who really is in love with parking. Most of the rest of us, we waive parking minimums. We understand that the future of, especially the urban core of Tampa, is going to be centered around transit, and a lot of this unnecessary cost associated with excess parking is not necessarily the best for urban planning.
Okay, we can give about another 5 minutes Q&A. Rory,
No, that's the study that is going to put out. That's part of what that study is, because what we in the previous study, I'm sorry, the question was, have we identified stops? A couple of them are kind of logical. We know where they'll be, but the specifics aren't. But part of the study that we're putting out right now that is going to hit the street for bids is going to identify all the logistics and the needs, the wants and the desires, so that we'll be ready to put that out for design build. So that's what the study is about. That's why it takes like a year and a half to complete, because it's the devil's always in the details.
Chris?
Right.
I think it makes a lot of sense. We also bring it to your attention as well. Those of us that have lived there, maybe two ways in either direction. They, put the traffic calming out there, and I think if you think about the logistics of going to Marshall Works, maybe the aquarium, and you have to go down this way. It should really take 45 minutes or 16 minutes, whatever you get down there. If you think about the proposal of going up Ford Avenue to moving it back around, see when Ford Avenue can come back down Palm Avenue, you're including trolley line, you can talk about that's you're including people that are in the east part of Tampa Heights or whatever. So you basically have like a half-mile run to the parking garage over there. So just a couple points of consideration, and I don't think anybody people are, should have to, trolley for 2 hours. Because so much work, they won't do it. I live over there, I won't do it, I wouldn't want to take 2 hours to get to Ybor. And the last thing is, you can talk about the rubber trolley, sort of making the connection between the two. Why do we have to wait on the streetcar extension? Let's hold that rubber trolley on now. The city, I can utilize resources to parking garages, if we should, away to hold this. Trying to park around the doors on Saturdays. Right, so that would fill a lot of issues between, building up the cities. Coffers and increasing the parking over there, people who like to park.
So the thoughts were about completing the loop instead of doing the one way. Part of that is logistics. And again, cost. It's so much easier for us to do the rubber wheel option, and we can provide the exact same service. It doesn't have to be steel rail, using the rubber wheel option to connect straight down Palm. It's just an easy back and forth commuter. Hart is actually working on circulators. That is actually funded. We got federal funding for electric buses to provide circulators. I'm not exactly certain if this is one of the routes that they're looking at. I imagine it is, because I know they want to hit Armature Works. But I'll again take an IOU and or get back with Rick about that as well.
Jason, do we have anything? Chad? Any other questions in the room?
I just got distracted. I saw myself on the monitor. I go, who is that old bald guy? Me. It was me.
Only part of that those have at least priority, but it's a red light, it can go, then there's a clicker that they can go through. It's one of the reasons the trolley could close, because it's waits of red lights.
That's, yes, the question was, will the trolley have a priority system for traffic management? I think that's part of the issue with the study that we do. That technology is readily available. It's readily available for emergency vehicles. I mean, it's something that we can pursue.
Anyone else?
My question is kind of related to like around safety. I know one of the problems with the people right now is there are like accidents. Pretty, I don't know how, but it does happen. And so like, is there anything like for the existing area, like, streetcar to like include like some of those intersections or anything? And then also where it's gonna like cross, it's gonna, make obviously have some busy intersections up here. Like, is there anything from a safety consideration perspective from like, avoiding accidents basically?
So the question is about accidents. So it's streetcar interaction with vehicles. We do have accidents. I'm happy to report they're actually fairly infrequent, and they're almost, I don't believe we've ever had one that is, and if I may be mistaken, but I don't believe there's one been the responsibility of the streetcar operator. It's usually cars bumping into the street. It's usually cars bumping into the streetcars. Thankfully, they're not usually very serious. Of course, it does cause property damage. I think that's part of any of the infrastructure that we build, is ensuring that, especially as we transition through intersections, making sure, and I think that goes as part of what the previous question about being able to activate traffic, the traffic devices to ensure safe crossings at intersections. I think it's a valid concern. I think we probably should take that forward.
Alan, is there anything that we as an association could be doing to try to facilitate this discussion?
No, I think Rick just asked if there's anything that the association can do to facilitate going forward. I think one, just making sure that your electeds all know that you're fully behind it, because, of course, as with competing priorities, And I think one of the biggest stress points we have right now, I don't know if anybody familiar with CIT, the half penny sales tax we have in Hillsborough County. So we have what's called the community investment tax. It was passed almost 30 years ago. It's a half penny sales tax that funds various portions of the county. One of the more controversial things with the stadium to retain the Buccaneers back then, but it also for police, fire, and infrastructure improvements. It's up for renewal and it's going to be on the ballot. Part of the problem is if CIT doesn't pass, everything's on the chopping block because with the city, quite honestly, the city can't function. Half penny doesn't sound like much, but it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So CIT is critically important to make sure that we continue that funding, because if the stuff that is critically that pays for, like the police and fire and some of the infrastructure issues, if it's not paid for out of CIT, it's going to be paid for by the funds that we're going to use for all these other wants. It's going to have to be paid for the needs. So I would strongly be advocates for ensuring that the CIT it's a tax we currently already pay. The good news is about 30% of that tax is paid for by people that don't live in this county. That come in, our day users, the people that live in Pasco County or Pinellas and come over to work. They're paying for about 30% of the money, and so they're helping pay for our infrastructure. So I would be very, very thankful, and I think you all would too, and make sure that this project moves forward, along with many of our other projects of road improvements. For those that you don't know, this past year, we tripled our road repaving budget because, our roads were in pitiful third world condition. We tripled it to almost a little over 14 million. We're hoping to triple it again this next year to try to catch up on some. It's like a 30-year deficit, and trying to build some of the infrastructure, our sidewalks infrastructure, especially in some of our poor areas. We're making sure that kids have sidewalks to walk on so that they can get to school. All of these things we're trying to move forward. And everything costs a lot more money than the government. It costs a lot more money than you think, and because of all the inflationary pressures we've seen, everything costs a lot more money than we ever expected it to cost. The good news is on our paving, we've actually brought a couple of crews in house. We bought the equipment so we can do actually the simple repaving in house, and we save like over half. It costs us less than half of what it costs to contract it out. More complex operations we still have to contract out. I'm hoping that we can do the same thing with sidewalk construction, that we can bring it to in-house crews and do our own sidewalks.
You have a quick question?
With the study that you guys are doing, are they considering like ADA and how far away from the streetcar that somebody with a disability will be able to get into the sidewalks? Because quite a few of the sidewalks in this area are just in tough shape. So when they're doing that and figuring out, okay, there could be a streetcar exit here, a person with disability, how far can they get from the streetcar?
Well, the question was about ADA and sidewalks with access to the streetcar. And I will tell you, I don't think it's just limited to just the streetcar. I think that it's a shame that our entire city isn't built around accessibility. It's something that's important to me. It's something that's important to good friends of mine, ensuring that accessibility is a high priority in everything we do as we build out. That's part of my thing about undergrounding utilities, because how many times you walk down these sidewalks and there's utility poles right in the middle of sidewalks and people can't go past these things. So not to mention the resiliency aspect of undergrounding utilities, but just getting these darn things out of our public right of ways and off of our sidewalks for people that need those sidewalks to get, to be able to leave their homes. So that's important to me. And yeah, I think as we continue to develop, not just streetcar and accessibility streetcar, but every project we do. In fact, it's one of the questions that I ask on all the projects is how this is making sure this is ADA compliant. The streetcars will be, they are, and they will be. Yeah, and they will be as we buy new ones, so ensure that they are. And again, it's something that's important to me, and I think it's important for our community.
No, thank you. I know there are other questions. We're all very stressed.
Yeah, I understand. Exciting times in Tampa.
We're going to be breaking into workshop
Right.
session, land use committee, and perfect. You can stick around and hang around with us. You may hear.
Yeah, I've got about 15 more minutes.
Okay, it'd be great.
Okay.
Stick around with us. Grab you by the collar.
Very good. Very good. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, with that said, and with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Brian Seal, the chair of our land use committee, who's going to be running the workshop from this point forward. And I'm going to shut up. It's all yours.
Thanks, Rick. While the PowerPoint's trying to start up here, I just want to recognize, are there any, I know there's a few land use committee members in the audience tonight. Just raise your hand if you're on the committee. Thank you to those who are. Greg mentioned, my name is Brian Seal, Chair of the Land Use Committee. You all are probably used to hearing from me. I get up here quite a bit. I've been on the board for several years. And tonight, we wanted to do something a little different, take a little bit of time, involve more people. Hopefully you can stick around. We'll keep this pretty short and sweet. We're going to break up into groups after that because we really want to hear from folks. So our land use committee is comprised of mostly people that have a professional background in this area. We've got land use attorneys, we've got builders, we've got architects, and we've got real estate agents on the committee, as well as a couple of other just citizens that have maybe done home renovations or some other stuff and have some hand, or just have paid attention and are passionate about issues. Land use committee is open to anybody who wants to get involved. And what we do is we watch the development that's going on and we try to guide it according to a set of values and documents that help guide this neighborhood. So I want to take a little bit of time here. I have a very short presentation to kind of set the stage for this. The reason why we're doing this is there's been a huge amount of development in Tampa Heights over the years. Frankly, our regulations are not strong enough to get the best outcome to have the ideal neighborhood we want. Our committee, oftentimes, I hate to say it, knows some more about different regulatory bodies that make decisions that go on and different developers that come into the neighborhood that only care perhaps about one property and don't understand what's going on in a string of properties, don't understand what's potentially going on with mass transit expansion, don't understand what's going on with other infrastructure and utility projects. We try to take all of that and synthesize it into one thing, and it may be, hey, we need more shade trees there, or we're going to ask you to widen sidewalks there to make more walkable, or put in bike parking, or reduce your parking counts, or this specific neighbor has a concern about how this interacts with their property or on their street. We want you to take this seriously. We try to catch this all as far in advance as we can. Now, there's some actors out there that do not want to engage with the public or change their project for what the public wants. There are others that proactively come to us. So we juggle this kind of strange position to do it, but we thought it might be good to take a little bit of time and hear from you all. We usually hear on an individual basis when projects and developers come before us to talk about this stuff. And there's a lot that happens in the background with the committee members and sort of off to the side interaction and requests. So with that in mind, I want to take a couple quick slides and give you an idea of some of those documents that guide the way that we look at things. And then after that, we're going to ask what else should be guiding us. So the first thing, and this is a key part of what we're talking about, is the neighborhood plan. Rick mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. Over the course of several years in the late 90s, the Civic Association, through funding from the Planning Commission, which is the countywide planning commission, created a neighborhood plan. It covered everything from social and cultural issues to land use development. We're not going to talk on the entire document tonight, but a good sizable portion of it addresses how the neighborhood should develop. This was passed by City Council as a resolution in 2003. The key factor in that is it's a resolution. It's not an ordinance. It does not have binding language in it. Therefore, all of these great values that are written in here are unenforceable for future development. It's a dream document, and that's been a problem for a long time that we've tried to work on. You can see up here real quickly, there's a map. You can see the nodes around Palm Avenue, around Columbus, and how those are envisioned as central areas of mixed use and commercial development. All of the things that we're somehow now starting to see happen were envisioned 20 years ago. It's taken that long to make some of this happen. And part of the problem is that this document is not strong enough. But what types of things does it have in there? Diversity of housing types. It's encouraging mixed use. Allowing granny flats and garage apartments. That's something that we actually were able to get added to the code in our overlay district. I'll touch on that in 1 second. Neighborhood identity, design compatibility, talking about cars and street parking being important, as well as using our historic alleys, fostering the design of places that encourage outdoor living space and through front porches and things like that. Contextualizing the development, preserving trees, reducing the impact of paved areas like parking lots, and keeping the historic character and orientation of the neighborhood. So these are all values that are written 20 years ago that try to guide the way that we look at the lens of things. So one of the things we were able to do, and you all were along for the ride on some of this, and a lot of you were integral and supportive of it, is last year, so 20 years after that document, it took until we could actually get some of that in enforceable code at the city through an overlay district. You might remember the city provided no funding, no consultants, no professional assistance in doing this. We wrote it as an organization, and we spent about 4 years to get it passed. And it's only a portion of some of the things in there. But what do? We created, that's a map of the neighborhood. It includes everything except for the Armature Works development. But what do? We created an extra set of development standards to allow on-street parking to count towards off-street parking, to encourage that. ADUs, AKA those granny flats, we actually made them allowable. Prior to that, it was almost impossible to get them allowed. And we also increased the size so that it made sense to allow a traditional garage apartment. Something that you see here that was done 100 years ago was illegal to do in many parts of the neighborhood. We changed some of that code so it's allowed, and as well as allowing front porches to encroach into the setback more, because we're governed by standard city suburban setbacks. This allows them to come up closer to the street, much like a lot of the houses were built 100 years ago. We're allowing we allowed townhomes to design around courtyards without a design exception. That helps with creating a more walkable place without garages being the dominant factor. We talk a lot about reducing parking minimums here. We actually did that. We exempted properties on Franklin Street, which has been in need of redevelopment, from having parking minimum requirements. A lot of those lots on Franklin Street can be developed now with 0 parking. We're really hoping to see some development happen because of that, because they don't have to dedicate that land for cars. They can put into income producing stuff. Eliminating all requirements for commercial projects under 1,500 square feet. Lee's Grocery, when they opened, they had to jump through hoops because they have no off-street parking spaces. We want to see more of that conversion. We took some of that from 20 years ago and finally put into law to allow that to happen easier, as well as allowing bicycle parking to offset that. So I just wanted to touch, that's really quick list of stuff, but that's about all we were able to accomplish out of this 20-year-old document, but is something. We need to do more. Another type of document that guides what we do. Now, this isn't necessarily an ordinance or a regulation, but it's the Heights Mobility Study. Camilo touched on some of this. And why is it important? Because FDOT runs I-275, they run Florida Avenue, and they run Tampa Street through our neighborhood. The primary north-south corridors of the entire city run through Tampa Heights. And so they did this mobility study. Part of this, in short-term improvements, identified 27 locations or intersections that needed quick short-term improvements. Not too many of those have gotten done. Some of them have, such as the light across from Sprouts at 7th Avenue and Tampa Street. But we had to lobby to speed that up to make that happen for safe crossing. The future phases now that we're looking at as part of this are now what's unfortunately not set in stone. Those stormwater improvements, that was supposed to be one of the primary drivers of the project on Tampa and Florida. That's now apparently, going up in smoke. We'll see if that happens. BRT, so that bus rapid transit, a faster bus service that's in a dedicated lane that runs between downtown to USF, was supposed to happen. For the last year and a half, that's been a big question mark. So there's these types of projects and studies out there that we want to see cemented, that we want to see put into place and committed to, that we should all be concerned about. And the final one that I want to touch on ties directly into the conversation about the streetcar, and it's an important thing that you all should know about. Between 2021 and 2022, HART, the transit agency, did a transit-oriented development, TOD, pilot project. They came here to this building several times, held several community charrettes and feedback gathering sessions. And what they did, and the engineering firm that they hired as a consultant, spit out a great report and a great regulatory framework on how to put some of this into development regulation. That has been sitting underneath who knows where, filed away at the city of Tampa, and has not been put into act. We actually took some information from this, put it in our overlay, but we couldn't do much. If the streetcar is going to be expanded like we're talking about, we need to do some of this. The city is working on starting to rewrite their zoning code. But if this sort of stuff that HARP spent hundreds of thousands of dollars probably doing this study, if this just sits on a shelf and we don't reform our regulation to get that smart growth around this, then we're going to be the same place we have. We're going to have patchwork development. We're going to have things that have no smart regulation about it. The work's already been done and the city's not moving on it. So we need to couple this with that and make sure that we are raising our voice. It even goes into detail. So here you can even see what they did. Urban center, TOD residential areas. They've classified the areas, how dense they should be, what those sort of streets and heights should look like, how they should address the streets. There's type forms like that. They've even gone to the lengths of classifying every street along that way and what type of development, how that development should face the street, you know, what the importance of carrying traffic on that street is. Even, look, they've even highlighted all of our alleys. And unfortunately, it's just for the southern half of the neighborhood because this is part of, again, tied to where the streetcar is going to go. But this is important work that's been done that is gathering dust. So I know I ran through a lot because I didn't want to talk for very long, but what I wanted to do was set the stage and give you an idea of what the land use committee looks at as we're judging and reviewing what types of developments are happening here. And through that light, I want you guys to think about, all right, that's what kind of regulations we have or don't have here. This is what kind of plans have been thrown out here. We're going to break up into groups and we're going to have a small group discussion here, which is something we don't do a lot, but it's going to be valuable because we want to know what you think about what's happening here. How has Tampa Heights been growing? How has it been changing in a physical way that you like or don't like? How do you want it to develop in the future? Is it something you want to see a better regulation on something? Is there a project you like? Is there somebody that did some great landscaping, or is there great examples you can think of, or really bad examples? Like, we don't ever want to see something like this happen again. Talk about that in your group. Bring it up. Can I identify Matt and Paul and Camilo? You guys want to stand up? We are going to divide up. The three of them with me are going to be sort of our scribes and discussion leaders. Rick, how long are we going to take here? 30 to 45. 30. Okay, so why don't we start and maybe identify 25 minutes? And so work towards, well, it's almost, why don't we work towards 8:30 and circle up. Let's talk about what you care. I'd love if people could stick around. If you could spare the time to do it, that would be great. But if you can't, we understand. And then what can we as a group and you as individuals, what could we do differently to help guide this in a better way? So along with that, I'm just going to go ahead and split the room here. Well, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 pretty complete rows. So why don't we do this? Why don't we just split up by row? And the back row, see that fourth row is pretty slim. Why doesn't the back 2 rows join each other? So the first row can go over here with Paul, and I just encourage you guys to grab a chair if you could and take it with you. The next row is going to go with Matt over in that corner. Then Camilo, why don't you take the third group right here? Okay, and I will take the fourth group in that room over to the side. And then if you are listening online, what we would ask is that you just enter any comments or ideas you have in the chat box, and Jason, our management assistant, is going to record those down, and the board is going to take that and review it and look at it to help inform what we do. Thank you.